Welcome to the law offices of Chris M. Ingram's Immigration News Show. Today we ask STEM pros, are you ready? We would like to thank attorney Chris M. Ingram and staff at the law offices of Chris M. Ingram for their hard work in preparing the research for this show, which draws on a wide variety of news sources from both sides of the aisle, providing a balanced view. Attorney Ingram is also a vocal advocate for the rights and protection of immigration applicants, although our coverage is designed to be nonpartisan. Please don't forget to like, follow, and subscribe to our channel. We are also on Spotify, YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook, X, Reddit, and Instagram, where we're growing rapidly thanks to our social media team. You can also visit our website on www.breakthroughUSA.com. We'd love to see you there.
Please note that this presentation should not be intended as legal advice for your specific situation. If you, a friend, or a family member would like a free consultation, you can visit our website at www.breakthroughUSA.com and schedule an appointment. We'd love to hear from you and help you if we can. We'd also like to point out that this presentation was created using AI hosts. Okay, let's dive in.
So I want you to imagine something. Imagine you're the only person in a room who actually knows how to operate a billion-dollar machine.
Right.
And it's like a machine that the entire company's future completely depends on. Now, logic dictates that you hold all the cards in that scenario, right?
Yeah, you'd think you'd be treated like absolute royalty.
Exactly. But right now, the immigrant engineers, the researchers, the data scientists who are literally building America's technological future, they're terrified.
They really are.
I mean, they are checking their emails at 3:00 a.m., just agonizing over whether their entire life in the United States is about to be erased by like a random spreadsheet error in HR.
It's a deeply unsettling reality.
Yeah.
We're looking at a massive stack of notes from attorney Chris Ingram and his team today, and it outlines what has to be one of the most bizarre contradictions in modern economic history.
Yeah, a massive contradiction.
I mean, we are in the middle of this huge technological renaissance, right? The AI boom. Yet the very people making it happen are walking on eggshells every single day.
It's what our legal team calls the STEM talent paradox, right?
Exactly.
Let's really unpack the mechanics of this. Because if you are a listener right now and you're working in artificial intelligence or machine learning, cybersecurity, data science, you are living this contradiction every single day.
Oh, absolutely. And on the surface, you know, the macroeconomic landscape looks like a gold rush for this talent.
It really does. You've got the absolute titans, the Googles, Metas, NVIDIA, OpenAI, and they are engaged in this brutal, just no-holds-barred global war to acquire you.
They are. But you have to look beneath that surface-level gold rush to see the actual structural fault lines that our researchers pointed out. General tech hiring over the last few years has actually been pretty sluggish.
Sluggish, really?
Yeah, I mean, after that hyper-growth phase of the 2010s and then the massive overhiring everyone did during the pandemic.
Oh, right, when everyone was just hiring whoever they could get?
Exactly. The industry experienced a violent correction. You know, interest rates went up, free money basically vanished, and unemployment in the general tech sector has been hovering around like 4.3 to 4.6%.
Which, okay, to be fair, doesn't sound totally apocalyptic compared to some other industries.
It doesn't, no.
Yeah.
But in the tech world, which kind of operates on this assumption of infinite perpetual growth,
right,
a 4.6% unemployment rate feels like a massive recession. So finance departments have clamped down hard. Operating budgets are under a microscope.
But then, simultaneously, the generative AI boom happens.
Precisely. So you have these legacy tech companies that are terrified of overspending on their traditional software engineering teams, right? But concurrently, they are absolutely terrified of losing the AI arms race.
So it's basically two completely different economies existing inside the exact same corporate building.
That's a great way to put it. In fact, Boston Consulting Group researchers noted in 2026 that AI is currently reshaping over half of all U.S. jobs.
Over half? Wow.
Yeah, the demand for that specific elite knowledge is exploding. But it's happening within a corporate framework that is structurally traumatized by recent budget cuts. So companies are proceeding, you know, very cautiously.
Which creates a highly volatile mixed signal environment.
Exactly. A huge mixed signal environment.
And I can see how that's frustrating for, say, an American-born developer. You know, will I get the budget for my project? But for an immigrant STEM professional, that mixed signal environment isn't just annoying at work. It's existential.
No, it's totally existential.
Your legal right to physically exist in the country is tethered to those random corporate signals. It's like being the only life raft on a sinking ship, but the people trying to pull you aboard are arguing over who pays for the rope.
That is the perfect analogy. And this is where we need to look at the day-to-day psychology, which our team's findings captured so brilliantly. Consider the concept of locus of control in psychology.
Okay, unpack that for me.
So, highly educated elite professionals are accustomed to an internal locus of control. You put in the thousands of hours of study, you conduct rigorous lab work, you publish the peer-reviewed papers, and your career advances.
Right. Effort equals outcome. You control your destiny.
Exactly. But the U.S. immigration system violently shifts that to an external locus of control.
Because suddenly, your effort doesn't dictate your outcome at all. The whims of some anonymous finance director do.
Precisely. Your fate rests in the hands of an HR manager's spreadsheet, or a sudden, opaque hiring freeze dictated by a board of directors you will never even meet. Let's look at a specific case study from our legal team's files.
Yeah, let's ground this.
There is a Taiwanese AI researcher named Wei. He was in the U.S. on OPT, which is optional practical training.
And for those who might not know the exact mechanics, OPT is essentially the grace period after an international student graduates, right? You get a limited window to work in your field of study.
Yes, exactly. And if you have a STEM degree, you can get an extension, giving you up to 3 years total. But the clock is always ticking. Relentlessly toward an expiration date, unless you secure long-term sponsorship, like an H1B visa. Now, Wei is the exact archetype of the talent these megacorps are bleeding for. He received 3 competing offers from top-tier companies in a single week.
Oh man, that has to be an incredible feeling. You've left your home country, navigated this brutal academic gauntlet, and now the biggest companies on earth are in a literal bidding war for you.
It is the dream realized, right? But just 48 hours after receiving those offers, the paradox struck.
What happened?
One of the companies abruptly backed out.
Great, really. Just pulled the offer.
Accepted. And they didn't question his qualifications. They didn't find a better candidate. The recruiter simply cited internal budget caution.
Unbelievable. Meaning, a finance executive looked at a quarterly projection, got spooked by the broader economic climate, and just hit a kill switch on a massive swath of offers.
Precisely. And Wei told our researchers how he spent the next week barely sleeping. I mean, he was anxiously replaying every interview, wondering if he'd said something wrong. He was terrified that the other 2 offers might also vanish overnight.
That's heartbreaking. He was holding winning lottery tickets, but he was terrified the lottery commission was going to declare bankruptcy before he could even cash them in.
Exactly. And that kind of psychological whiplash is devastating. You go from having maximum leverage to feeling utterly disposable.
Yeah. And then there's the story of Rahul from the legal research, which highlights another layer of this vulnerability. He's an ML machine learning PhD on an H1B visa, right?
Yes. And Rahul's experience perfectly maps that 2 economies concept we discussed earlier. He watched his company implement a brutal freeze on general tech hiring.
So his colleagues are getting laid off.
Right. Colleagues laid off, friends struggling to even get initial screening calls for standard software roles. Meanwhile, because his specific specialization was in machine learning, recruiters from 3 competitor companies were aggressively sliding into his inbox, trying to poach him within a 48-hour window.
It's so crazy, but the notes say he didn't feel secure at all, despite being poached. The phrase that really stuck out to me in Chris's research was that Rahul felt simultaneously powerful and completely exposed.
Yes, and it's because he knew that if he accepted a new offer, he would have to transfer his H1B visa. And right now, any transition involves a period of intense vulnerability.
Cecile Cam helped me as a primary caseworker on my EB-1A petition, and I can't thank enough for wonderful and expert opinions that she shared over the entire period of our working together. Cecile's expert guidance and patiently responding on my questions helped me a lot in securing my EB-1A petition. There were many instances when Cecile came on the direct phone call, then the emails to help me navigate through the complex process of EB-1A petition. I highly recommend Cecil's and Ingram's expert guidance for anyone looking for EB-1A route.
How so?
Well, what if the new company institutes a hiring freeze while his transfer is pending? If you are laid off or your offer is rescinded while in an H1B, the clock starts instantly. You have a 60-day grace period to secure a new job, get a new employer to file a petition, and get it approved.
Wait, 60 days? That's nothing. In a market where interview processes alone can take 2 months.
It's terrifying. 60 days to completely uproot and reroute your life.
It's like renting an apartment in a building that could be demolished at any second with no warning. I mean, you have what everyone needs, but their bureaucratic infighting could still leave you on the street.
And the cognitive load of carrying that anxiety is immense. Think about it. These are professionals trying to solve some of the most complex, algorithmic, and engineering challenges of our generation.
Right, they should be focused on the work.
But instead of focusing entirely on their research, they are spending their evenings scouring Reddit immigration forums and trying to parse corporate earnings reports.
Just to guess if their sponsor is going to lay off 10% of their staff.
Exactly.
Okay, so that is the software side, the algorithmic side. But AI does not just live in the cloud. We forget this sometimes, right? The cloud is a physical place. It's a massive temperature-controlled warehouse full of spinning disks and silicon chips.
Very true.
And according to attorney Chris Ingram's findings, this is where the paradox moves from the abstract into the physical world. Let's transition to the hardware side, because the supply chain pressures are creating a totally different kind of nightmare for STEM talent.
It is a critical pivot in this deep dive. We have to talk about physical infrastructure, and specifically the Cheap GP and Science Act.
Right.
This is one of the most monumental shifts in American industrial policy in decades. The U.S. government recognized that being reliant on overseas manufacturing for semiconductors, which are the brains of everything from your smartphone to advanced fighter jets, is an unacceptable national security risk.
Oh, completely.
So they have unleashed historic levels of capital to bring fabrication plants, or fabs, back to U.S. soil.
And we are talking about massive investments here. Companies like Intel, TSMC, Arizona, Samsung, Broadcom building these $20 billion mega factories in places like Arizona, Ohio, and Texas.
Correct. The physical capital is there. The concrete is literally being poured. But here is the fatal flaw in the plan that our legal team highlighted. The United States simply does not produce enough native-born talent to design the chips or run the advanced manufacturing processes inside those fabs.
It's just a numbers game, right?
It is. The domestic pipeline for highly specialized electrical engineering and materials science degrees is nowhere near robust enough to meet this sudden massive demand.
So the government is essentially building a fleet of advanced aircraft carriers, but we don't have enough pilots to fly them.
Exactly, which means they are entirely dependent on immigrant STEM professionals to make the CHIPS Act actually work. They cannot operate without them.
Okay, but how does the supply chain play into this?
Well, this talent dependency is colliding head-on with extreme supply chain chaos. To build a semiconductor or an electric vehicle battery or an AI data center, you need an uninterrupted flow of critical minerals. We are talking about elements like gallium, germanium, rare earths, copper, and tungsten.
And right now, those supply chains are a total mess.
A huge geopolitical mess. Much of the global supply and refining capacity for these minerals, particularly things like gallium and germanium, is controlled by foreign adversaries who are weaponizing export controls.
Okay, I want to connect the dots here because this is where the butterfly effect gets truly wild for our listeners. How does a bottleneck in the supply of, say, gallium happening on the other side of the planet actually threaten the visa status of an engineer sitting in Arizona?
It's all about a cascade of financial panic. Let's say a semiconductor company is building a new facility. They need a steady supply of gallium arsenide, which is crucial for high-frequency chips. Suddenly, an export control is announced in Asia.
Okay.
The procurement team at the U.S. company cannot guarantee when they will get their raw materials or how much it will cost.
So the timeline for the whole factory just gets pushed back.
Exactly. The project stalls. And when a $20 billion project stalls, the chief financial officer looks at the cash burn rate and panics. The CFO issues a company-wide mandate, freeze all non-essential operating expenses until the supply chain clears up.
Wait, let me guess.
Yep. In the bizarre logic of corporate accounting, paying the legal and filing fees for an immigrant employee's visa extension is often categorized under discretionary operating expenses.
Wow. Are you serious? So an HR director gets a memo to halt visa sponsorships, not because the engineer isn't valuable to the actual project, but because a cargo ship full of germanium is stuck in a port halfway across the world.
Precisely. The macro-level geopolitical bottleneck directly results in an individual engineer having their life thrown into absolute chaos. Our team highlighted a case that illustrates this perfectly. Look at Arjun's story.
Yes, Arjun. He's a fabrication process engineer from India. Real quick, what does a process engineer actually do in a fab?
They are basically the wizards of the manufacturing floor. They design and optimize the incredibly precise chemical and physical processes required to etch billions of microscopic transistors onto a silicon wafer.
Which is mind-blowing technology.
It requires a level of precision that is almost incomprehensible. Now, Arjun is standing inside one of these brand new multi-billion-dollar U.S. fabs. He is the human manifestation of the Cheap Peace Act. He is actively bringing manufacturing independence back to America.
And yet, he told our researchers that he feels a physical knot in his stomach every single time his immigration status comes up for an internal review.
Because he knows how fragile the corporate machinery is.
Yeah.
He knows his project could be delayed by 6 months due to a tungsten shortage, and he is terrified that during that delay, an algorithmic sweep of the HR database might flag his visa extension as a cost-saving opportunity.
Just a line item on a spreadsheet?
Exactly. And
Wow.
his dream project and his life in America could vanish instantly.
He is building the foundation for American technological autonomy, but he has zero autonomy over his own life. The irony is just suffocating.
It really is.
And Dr. Priya's story from the legal research is very similar, but in the energy sector, right?
Yes. Dr. Priya is a materials scientist developing next-generation battery chemistry. This is the holy grail for electric vehicles and grid-level renewable energy storage.
Huge priority.
Absolutely. But battery research is intensely dependent on lithium, cobalt, and nickel supply chains, which are currently incredibly volatile.
So she's experiencing the exact same cascade. A lithium shortage stalls the pilot program. The pilot program stall makes the executives nervous, and her visa timeline suddenly becomes precarious.
She described it to our team as a profound exhaustion. The exhaustion of feeling, as she put it, one step away from stability. I mean, she's doing work that will dictate the future of global energy, yet she goes to sleep every night knowing that a disruption in a cobalt mine in another hemisphere could lead to her being forced out of the United States.
Okay, I have to jump in and push back on this, because structurally, logically, this makes no sense to me.
How so?
If the U.S. government just dumped billions of dollars into these industries through the CHIP PS Act and the Inflation Reduction Act, and these companies are in a desperate global war for the exact skills Arjun and Dr. Priya have, why on earth are these professionals feeling vulnerable?
It's a great question.
Shouldn't a company like Intel or Meta be throwing golden handcuffs on them? I mean, if I have a machine that prints money and you are the only person who knows how to plug it in, I'm not going to let an HR spreadsheet dictate whether you get to stay in the building.
Right, and if the market were purely rational, and if the U.S. integration system were designed to actually optimize for talent retention, you would be absolutely right. They would be treated like royalty. But this brings us to the root cause of the vulnerability, which is deeply analyzed in attorney Chris Ingram's notes, the fatal flaw of employer dependency.
Right. My system isn't designed for the employee at all. It's designed around the employer.
Exactly. The H1B visa and most employment-based green card categories like the PRM process tether the immigrant's legal status entirely to a specific corporate entity. You are not a free agent. You are essentially indentured to the sponsor.
USCIS is cracking down on visa fraud, and even approved cases are being revoked.
Why was my visa denied? USCIS revoked my approval. At the law offices of Chris M. Ingram, we handle every detail with care. Every form, every fact, every time.
So join us for a free consultation. We do things the right way. Let us take care of you.
And as you mentioned earlier, a corporation is a complex, often totally irrational organism. An HR department or a legal department inside a massive tech firm is optimizing for the corporation's overall risk mitigation, right? Not for the career stability of a specific data scientist.
Precisely.
Okay.
And this is why relying on an employer during a time of macroeconomic caution is so insanely dangerous. A recruiter from a top firm could spend months wooing you. They could promise you the moon, a massive salary, immediate green card sponsorship.
And it sounds amazing.
It does. But if a macro-level shock hits a supply chain bottleneck, a spike in interest rates, the CFO can issue a mandate to freeze all immigration legal expenditures.
And your rock-solid offer is just ghosted overnight. It's the illusion of safety. You think because your skills are in demand, you are secure. But you aren't actually secure. You are just renting your security from a landlord who might decide to sell the building tomorrow.
That is a perfect analogy. You are renting your security. And here is where a lot of STEM professionals make a critical miscalculation. They look at the news. They see politicians on both the left and the right agreeing, in principle, that the U.S. needs to attract and retain the best AI minds to outcompete global rivals.
Right. Everyone agrees on that.
So they assume the government will eventually step in and fix the system. They wait for legislative rescue.
But the research is incredibly blunt about this. I mean, our team explicitly warns that relying on congressional reform right now is purely election season theater.
It is entirely theatrical. The mechanics of politics in Washington rarely align with the speed of technological innovation. Yes, both sides of the aisle agree that high-skilled STEM immigration is vital. But in Congress, high-skilled immigration reform is never debated in a vacuum.
What do you mean?
It is inevitably tied to the broader, deeply controversial and highly polarized debates about border security and undocumented immigration.
Ah, okay, so the STEM professionals basically become bargaining chips.
Exactly. A bill to increase the number of tech visas will be blocked unless it includes provisions for border walls or a path to citizenship for other groups. It becomes a legislative hostage situation. So while politicians will give grand speeches at tech conferences about the importance of retaining top talent, the actual legislative gears are completely gridlocked.
Wow.
There is virtually zero chance of a meaningful, rapid policy change that is going to rescue Wei or Rahul or Arjun in the near future.
So if you are an immigrant engineer sitting in your lab right now thinking, oh, I'll just wait for the government to create a new startup visa or, lift the country caps, you are essentially gambling your entire career on a paralyzed political system.
It is a massive trap, and this leads to one of the most vital insights in the legal research. Our team discusses the hidden cost of waiting, specifically this concept of the shelf life of your evidence.
Okay, let's dive deep into this because this isn't an intuitive concept. How does evidence age in the eyes of an immigration adjudicator? I assume if I publish a groundbreaking paper, it remains a groundbreaking paper forever, right?
In the academic world, sure, yes. But in the world of high-tier immigration law, particularly when you are proving your ongoing current impact on a field, evidence absolutely depreciates.
Really?
Let's say you published a phenomenal paper on a new machine learning architecture. In year 1, it is cutting edge. In year 2, it is accumulating citations rapidly. At this moment, your evidence of extraordinary ability is at its absolute peak.
But what if you wait? What if you decide the economy is too shaky right now and you tell yourself, I'll apply for my green card in 3 years when things settle down?
By year 5, the field of AI has completely moved on. Your architecture is now the baseline, not the frontier. The citation curve flattens. If you submit that paper to U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services 5 years from now, the adjudicator might look at it and say, well, this was important half a decade ago, but what have you done lately?
Oh, that makes perfect sense. The speed of innovation is actually working against you if you hesitate. You are waiting for external validation from the market or the government, while the internal value of your own achievements slowly fades away in the eyes of the law.
You are depreciating your own assets by hesitating. You're allowing your most powerful leverage to expire. And that brings us to the core strategic pivots outlined by attorney Chris Ingram. If waiting for political reform is a delusion, and relying on a budget-conscious corporate employer is a trap, what is the actual path forward?
Seizing control, building your own safety net by completely removing the employer from the equation.
Exactly. The solution our researchers emphasize is self-petitioning. Specifically utilizing the EB-1A visa, which is for individuals with extraordinary ability, or the EB-2 NIW, which stands for National Interest Waiver.
And these are employment-based green card pathways that do not require a corporate sponsor.
Correct. You act as your own petitioner.
Okay, let's break down how you actually win one of these, because I imagine it's not as simple as mailing your resume to the government and saying, hey, I'm really smart, please let me stay.
No, definitely not.
How does the EB-2 NIW actually work? I mean, instead of waiting in line hoping a company invites you into the VIP section, this strategy is about proving to the government that you practically built the club. But how do you translate daily lab work into a compelling national interest story?
It requires navigating a very specific legal framework, primarily based on a precedent decision known as the matter of Dhanasar. To win a national interest waiver, you have to satisfy 3 specific prongs.
Okay, let's walk through them. What is prong 1?
Prong 1 is proving that your proposed endeavor has both substantial merit and national importance. It's not enough to just say, I'm a very good data scientist who writes clean code.
Right.
You have to connect the dots between your daily work and the broader needs of the United States.
Give me an example of that. Let's go back to Dr. Priya, our battery material scientist. How does she frame her work for prong one?
She doesn't just say she tests chemical compounds all day. She frames her endeavor around advancing U.S. energy independence, mitigating climate change, and reducing reliance on foreign supply chains for critical battery minerals.
Oh, I see.
She proves that her specific algorithmic modeling of lithium degradation directly contributes to the U.S. goal of dominating the electric vehicle market. Suddenly, her lab work has profound national importance.
Okay, that makes sense. What about prong two?
Prong 2 requires proving that you are well-positioned to advance the proposed endeavor. This is where you look at the individual's specific background.
Like their resume, essentially.
Exactly. Do you have the advanced degrees? Do you have a track record of success? Do you have letters of recommendation from independent experts in the field who can vouch for your unique skills?
So prong one is about the work itself, and prong two is about proving you are the person to do it.
Correct.
And prong three?
Prong 3 is the balancing test. You must prove that, on balance, it would be beneficial to the United States to waive the requirement of a job offer and the traditional labor certification process.
And the traditional process being the PRM, where the employer has to prove they couldn't find a qualified American worker, which, takes years and costs a fortune.
Exactly.
I am beyond thrilled with my experience working with this team. From start to finish, they were highly professional, responsive, and thorough in every detail of my petition. They guided me step by step with clarity and confidence. Thanks to their incredible work, my EB-1A petition was approved, and I could not be more grateful. I would highly recommend this team to anyone pursuing EB-1, NIW-01, or other immigration options.
For prong 3, you argue urgency and specialized knowledge. You essentially say, the U.S. is in a critical technological race right now. My skills are so specialized and the national need is so urgent that forcing me to go through the years-long employer-dependent PRM process would actually harm U.S. interests.
And here is where this strategy gets truly brilliant. The legal research points out that the very things making the market terrifying right now, the critical mineral shortages, the lack of domestic chip designers, the massive macroeconomic anxiety, they actually strengthen your self-petition case.
It is the ultimate judo move. You take the macroeconomic crisis and use its momentum to your advantage.
Yeah.
If the U.S. government is publicly panicked about a bottleneck in semiconductor manufacturing because we don't have enough process engineers, and you are a process engineer applying for a national interest waiver, that crisis is your strongest piece of evidence for prong 3.
You are literally the solution to the problem keeping the policymakers awake at night. You leverage the crisis. You say, look at the geopolitical supply chain mess, look at the talent gap, now look at my qualifications. I am the answer.
Precisely. You shift the narrative completely. You aren't a liability asking for a favor, you are a strategic asset offering a solution. And when we look at the EB-1A, the extraordinary ability category, it's an even higher bar, governed by the Kazarian framework, but the underlying philosophy is exactly the same.
Prove you're the Todd of your field.
Yes. You have to prove you are in the small percentage of individuals who have risen to the very top of your field.
And what happens when you successfully navigate this? Let's talk about the upside, because our team details a massive shift in market power once that green card is secured.
The transformation is staggering. I mean, it goes far beyond simply having peace of mind. Once you hold a green card via self-sponsorship, you are a free agent in a market that is starving for your talent.
Right.
You are no longer tethered to a hesitant employer. You no longer have to check the box on applications that says, I require sponsorship now or in the future.
Which instantly removes the friction for the hiring company. They don't have to get their legal department involved. They don't have to wait months for a visa transfer. They don't have to worry about H1B caps or lotteries. You are just pure, ready to deploy talent.
Exactly. And because you are a free agent, you can finally leverage the bidding war to your full advantage. Let's say you are on an H1B and Google offers you a job, but Meta offers you slightly more. Walking across the street to Meta involves a mountain of paperwork, legal risk, and potential delays.
Right, so you might just stay at your current job to avoid the headache.
Exactly. But with a green card, it's just a signature on a new contract.
You can play these tech titans against each other the exact way American-born engineers do. The research notes that when top-tier STEM professionals secure this autonomy, they regularly go on to command compensation packages well over $1 million a year.
That's incredible.
They transition from being a perceived legal liability to a pure, highly sought-after asset.
You absolutely do.
Okay, this theory sounds incredible. Who wouldn't want to be a free agent? But I want to bring this back down to reality, because navigating the Donosar framework or the Kazarian criteria isn't something an engineer can just, do on their lunch break.
Yeah.
You are going up against U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services, which is a massive, highly skeptical bureaucracy.
It requires a highly specialized legal guide. You cannot use a generalist firm that handles divorces one day and traffic tickets the next. You need specialists who understand the STEM sector intimately.
Yeah.
This is where the track record of attorney Chris M. Ingram's team becomes so relevant. They have over 20 years of specialization specifically in translating dense, complex technical achievements into compelling legal arguments.
Because an immigration adjudicator isn't an AI researcher or a materials scientist, they are a government officer. You have to translate the genius of the lab into the language of the law.
Exactly. And the true test of a legal team isn't just filing the initial petition, it's how they handle pushback from the government. I'm talking about RFEs.
Okay, let's explain what an RFE is, because that acronym strikes fear into the heart of any applicant.
RFE stands for Request for Evidence. It happens when the immigration adjudicator reviews your petition and essentially says, we see your argument, but we are not convinced yet. We need more proof that your work has national importance or that you are truly extraordinary.
It's the government pushing back. And I imagine for an applicant who just poured their heart and soul into a 500-page petition, getting an RFE feels like a rejection.
Oh, it can feel deeply demoralizing. But a seasoned legal team views an RFE not as a defeat, but as a roadmap. The adjudicator is telling you exactly what doubts they have.
I see.
Our legal team has a phenomenal track record of confronting these RFEs. They look at the government's doubts, they gather new, targeted evidence, perhaps a highly specific letter from an industry expert explaining the impact of a specific algorithm, and they dismantle the adjudicator's skepticism piece by piece.
I want to look at some of the case studies and client feedback from the research because it really highlights the mechanics of how this team operates. There's a Google review from a client named Pulkit. He specifically praised his caseworker, Laura.
Yes.
He noted she was clear and organized, but the part that jumped out to me was that she was willing to jump on calls to eliminate confusion.
That human element is vital. Remember the cognitive load we discussed earlier?
Yeah, the crushing anxiety.
These professionals are carrying immense anxiety. The process is inherently confusing. Pulkit noted that Laura explained exactly what she needed from him to complete her drafts, breaking the massive legal mountain into manageable, actionable steps.
And it seems like a consistent theme. The reviews from Sandeep K. and Saxena echo this. They praised attorney Chris M. Ingram's team for turning pressure into progress. They specifically mentioned a caseworker named Alexandra, noting that she removed the confusion and built a strong case around my chip design impact. The result was a faster than expected approval.
Building a case around chip design impact is a perfect example of satisfying the Donosar framework. Alexandra didn't just say the client was a good engineer. She clearly articulated how their specific chip designs advanced U.S. semiconductor dominance.
Wow. And another client noted that the team drafted one of the strongest arguments I've seen.
When you have an engineer, someone who spends their entire life dealing in rigorous logic, data, and proof telling you that your legal brief is the strongest argument they've ever seen, that means you've built a bulletproof narrative.
It shows they are crafting bespoke, highly strategic narratives. They aren't just using templates. They are deeply analyzing the unique value of the individual.
Exactly.
Let's address the specific Q&A insights from the research, because Chris's team tackled the exact hesitations listeners are probably feeling right now. One of the most common questions is, with the economy giving such mixed signals and my employer being cautious, should I even pursue sponsorship right now?
Attorney Chris Ingram's answer to that is very direct, and it cuts through the noise. His advice is, only with a strong backup plan.
He doesn't sugarcoat the reality of the market.
Not at all. He acknowledges the critical mineral shortages, the supply chain chaos, the cautious finance departments. He's telling professionals that relying solely on your employer in this specific geopolitical and economic climate is reckless.
Yeah.
The smartest first step, the absolute necessary backup plan, is an immediate evaluation of your self-petition options.
Because even if your manager assures you everything is fine, your manager doesn't control the global supply of germanium. And your manager definitely doesn't control the CFO's budget sweep.
No, they don't.
Having an EB-2 NIW or an EB-1A petition in motion is your ultimate safety net. If the company suddenly downsizes your department, your green card process doesn't die. It continues independently.
It is fundamental risk mitigation. These engineers build redundant power systems for their data centers to prevent catastrophic failure.
Right, of course.
Well, they need to build a redundant immigration strategy for their own lives.
So if you are a STEM professional listening to this and you are telling yourself, I'll just wait a year, I'll wait for the tech market to fully rebound or for the election to pass, what is the true hidden cost of that delay, according to our researchers?
The hidden cost is the absolute erosion of your own leverage. Every single month you delay, multiple things are working against you. First, as we discussed, your current research and achievements are aging. They are losing their freshness and impact in the eyes of the adjudicator. Second, the macro environment remains unpredictable. Your employer's promises could evaporate tomorrow.
And
Third, the self-petition pathways themselves are becoming more competitive. As more top-tier talent wakes up to the danger of employer dependency, more of them are going to file for the EB-1A and EB-2 NIW. If you wait, you are entering a much more crowded field, trying to prove your extraordinary ability with older evidence. The cost of hesitation is literally your autonomy.
Which is why the immediate next step advised by our team is so logical. It's to schedule a free eligibility audit. It's not a commitment, it's just getting clear, objective data on where you stand. It takes you out of the realm of anxiety and guessing and puts you into the realm of strategy.
Knowledge is the only antidote to that external locus of control we talked about. An eligibility audit tells you exactly what your options are, allowing you to reclaim your agency.
Before we wrap up this deep dive, I want you to think about everything we've unpacked today. We've talked about the talent wars, the multi-billion-dollar fabs, the geopolitical supply chains, and the incredible, undeniable leverage you possess as a top-tier STEM professional. But I want to leave you with a final provocative thought to mull over as you go back to your lab or your code or your research. What if the biggest risk to your future in the United States isn't a hiring freeze or a corporate budget cut or a bottleneck in critical minerals? What if the biggest risk to your future is simply your own lack of autonomy? You are spending your absolute brilliance building the future for someone else. Are you building someone else's safety net, or are you finally ready to build your own? Thank you so much for being with us today. We hope you gained a lot from this discussion. Please leave us a comment if you can. Additionally, you can support our channel by sharing it with your friends and family, helping us build this community together. Also, follow us on Spotify, YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook, X, and Instagram, where we're growing rapidly thanks to our social media team. We would also like to thank attorney Chris Ingram and his dedicated team once again for researching and preparing this material for our presentation. See you next time on Let's Talk U.S. Immigration. Bye for now.